Hi everybody, it's Kara, and some of you may remember that quite a few weeks ago I started what was going to be a series of videos on some basic information for people who are just getting started in crafting. And the first video that I did, I think actually it was 2 parts, was all about inks. And I had planned to get back to it a lot sooner than this, but you know, life happened and I didn't. But I thought today I would just give a very quick review on the basic 3 kinds of stamps that a lot of us use in paper crafting, and so that's what you see in front of you. I have some clear stamps, I have some cling stamps, and I have a wood-mounted stamp, just to show you a real brief example of all of them. So the first one right here is just a very cheap little Studio G stamp set. These are the clear ones, of course clear because you can see right through them, which makes positioning them on whatever your project is a lot easier because you can see exactly what you're doing with them. They're also, in my opinion, which is what all of this video is about, probably about the easiest to store. They're the smallest, I think, so you can kind of store them a little bit easier. I tend to store my clear stamps in DVD cases, and I do have a video all about my stamp storage that I will try and link down below in the description for you guys to check out. But I do like these because they're easy to position, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Another kind are these cling stamps. Now the cling stamps are very similar to the wood block in that typically the stamp itself is made out of some kind of rubber, red rubber or a different color depending on the company. Then they're attached to the cushion, which you can see right here, that gray material. The difference between them and the wood mount is that they're just not put on a piece of wood. That way you can use them right here like you can the clear stamps on some sort of an acrylic block. Now, you should also keep in mind that clear stamps are sometimes referred to as polymer or acrylic. I think some people call them. Basically, it's just any kind of stamp that you can see through. The cling stamp can be mounted or unmounted when you buy it. Mounted means it comes on the gray foam or whatever color foam already. Unmounted means you get just the red rubber or the rubber piece, the stamp itself, and you have to mount it yourself. And I have done that. It's pretty easy. You basically just have one side of this cling material that you buy that's very, very sticky, and that's where the stamp would attach, and then you cut it out. And then the back of all of these is usually covered by this piece of material when you first get it, and you peel it off, and then that shows you the cling material that will attach to the acrylic block. Okay? And then of course the last one is the wood-mounted stamp, which is the red rubber, or again whatever color depending on the manufacturer, with a little bit of cushion on a block. I don't have as many of these by far as I do of the other 2 kinds, just simply because they're harder to store. They're obviously a lot larger, so I don't tend to buy them very often. So let me just show you really quickly how I stamp with them. And I'm just using this little cheapy notepad just for the sake of example here. So this particular little clear stamp I put on a Tim Holtz acrylic block. These are my block that I prefer because they're so thin. I also have really started to use the Fiskars Stamp Press quite a bit, which I keep on my desk, and it's right here. And you can see it's got grids on it, and I'll show you how to use that in just a minute. But typically with one of these, you pick the stamp you're going to use for your project, pick the ink depending on what you want to do, ink it up, and then stamp it wherever you want. And you can see what I'm talking about in that you can see exactly where you're placing it. Okay? And depending on what the stamp is, it also allows you, if you wanted to curve it, some of the stamps you could actually, change the way they look, things like that. They're a little bit more, they're easy to work with, in my opinion. Now, I know some people, when they first get these cling stamps, think that some of them, depending on the manufacturer, need to be, I think people refer to it as seasoned. A lot of people will use an eraser on it to get whatever maybe little bit of coating is on there, so you can do that if you think your stamp's not getting a very good image. Sometimes people also like to put a cushion underneath the piece of paper or project that they're stamping because they think that that cushion gives them a better stamped image. Again, that's personal preference, you just have to kind of play around with it. Now if you're using a stamp press, the stamp press I like because I don't have to worry about pulling up from the image. So for example, when I stamp down, once I've applied the pressure, then I have to pull it up. A lot of mistakes, probably more mistakes than most, happen when you're pulling it up. That's when you're likely to kind of mess up your image. So on this, you don't have to do that. The actual stamp press does it for you, and I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. Let me pull another little stamp off. I like to use this thing just to pick it up, and you can of course line it up. I'm not doing as careful of a job as I would normally. I'm working around the tripod a little bit too. So anyway, you can then apply your ink just like you do with the regular acrylic block, of course, and then pick your position. And the nice thing about this, if you can kind of keep your eye on the arrow here, is if I want to, I can kind of shimmy it around with the foam, find out where I want it, press, make sure I get a good press of the image, and let go, and it pops up on its own. So I don't have to worry about removing, you know, pulling back on the acrylic block. And that I really like, and this can be used, of course, both with the clear stamp or with the clear cling. So let me show you the cling. Once you take off that white piece on the back, this one that I showed you before, then it will stick to the same acrylic block or the same stamp press, whatever you want. You ink it up in the same way. The difference with these is, of course, you can't see exactly where your image is going to stamp. You have a decent idea, but, sorry about that, you can see that there's a little bit of an edge around here, so you're not going to see exactly where you want this, or exactly where it's going to go. You have to kind of hope that you got it approximately where you want it. With the cling stamp, or the clear stamp, of course, you can see through the whole thing, which makes placement a little bit easier. And then, of course, you have the wood mounted, which you don't need to use any kind of acrylic block for, because the block, of course, is attached to the stamp. But again, the downside is you're not going to see exactly where you're placing it because you can't see through the block. Okay, so everybody has their own personal preference on these. Just depends on what you like and what you want to store to a certain degree. I tend to get primarily, like I said, cling and clear stamps because I like the way I can position them a little easier and I can store them much, much easier. And if you knew how large my stamp collection was, you would understand why I don't want to be storing a lot of wooden blocks. Couple quick things just to mention. If you decide to get into stamping and you get clear stamps, and after a while if you use them and they stop sticking to the acrylic block, you can wash them with just a little bit of dish soap and a lot of water and let them dry, and that tends to put like the stickiness, whatever you want to call it, back in the acrylic, so it works. Keep in mind some inks will stain your stamp. That doesn't impact how it stamps. I typically clean mine right away with a alcohol-free baby wipe. A lot of people use various stamp cleaners, so you can use whatever you'd like. I think that's the basic information about stamps. I wanted to keep it pretty simple for those getting started. If you have a question that I didn't cover in this, leave it down below and I'll get back to you. Again, these are only my opinions, obviously. I'm not saying I'm an expert in anything. It's just what I found over the years stamping. It's one of my probably most favorite things to do for when I craft, and you will be seeing a lot more of it in the next year because I plan to get back to card making and things like that that are conducive to using all of my stamps. So once again, questions, leave them down below, and as always guys, thanks so much for watching and I hope you're having a great day where you're at. Bye bye.